This week on the Old School RuneScape Update, Pull 84 Batch 2 changes arrive for Sire and Challenge Mode Chambers of Xeric. The Clue Scroll discussion returns, focusing on the 1-hour timer and stackable clues, also Varlamore Fletching rewards, and Sins of the Father. This is the Old School RuneScape Update, Episode 74, recorded Monday, May 5th, 2024. Self-interest voting. Hello everybody and welcome to the Old School RuneScape Update. Sirion and myself are here as we are each and every week. Well, mostly. We won't be here next week, but more on that in a little bit later near the end of the podcast. But good to have you back. Good to be back in the chairs doing this show here. I feel like it's been a while since we got to talk about actual updates, you and I, because of your trip and just the way the updates have landed. But we actually have a fair bit of substantive news this week, don't we?
Yeah, things just kept piling on top of each other. That tends to be the news cycle in Old School, isn't it? Some weeks it's tumbleweeds, and the other week you just get one banger after the other.
Yeah, that is a definite way of putting it. But in the meantime, of course, if you want to follow along, full show notes can be found over at update.show. You can also subscribe to the podcast there on all of your favorite podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, and more. Plus YouTube as well at youtube.com/@OSRS update. All right, so let's start with the non-poll part of the update this week with the content we got. Pull 84 Batch 2 content featuring
it's kind of still poll content.
Well, I mean it's not a new poll is what I'm saying. It's not a new poll because this is the Abyssal Sire stuff, challenge mode layouts at Chambers of Xeric, and Chinchompa Insurance, amongst other things. I had a good talk with Alex while you were away about the Sire, and he agreed that most of the changes that were put forward in the poll definitely should have been here. I don't know that. Do you have the Slayer level to fight Sire? I don't think you do.
I don't.
Okay.
Don't. I did do it. I did try it in the first leagues I did. Trailblazer Reloaded. And somehow got completely smacked. Even I don't think I was like max tier in leagues at that point, but even with all of the leagues buffs, I got completely smacked.
Okay.
So I didn't go back doing leagues 5 last leagues at all. Didn't want to bother, and I kind of agree. Like, I understood the concept of the boss, and it never just really felt interesting.
It never really spoke to you. And just a recap for people who didn't read the poll or weren't here for that episode, they have shortened the boss's lung phase. The Sire is now targetable during its transition phase to an effect if you have the DPS. Just lets you get into the next phase and start loading up the damage there. They also upped its speed to match the player's run speed and implemented a minimum hit of 50% of your weapon's max hit, allowing endgame setups to one-phase vents more reliably. That's a vent change there for that, and that was the bulk of our discussion. And when we talked about that with Alex, and he seemed to think that it's kind of just not really changing the essence of the boss as it is. It's kind of just moving things around the edges. So for people who are fully acquainted with it and have a relatively high level gear setup that are adapted to it, are going to be able to just have a smoother experience at Sire. So that's largely where that one lands.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to put it.
Yeah.
It like that first phase is just so frustrating because you need to like kill all of the vents, and then you can not do all of the vents in one phase, so you just have to wait for them to become vulnerable again. And in a sense, the fight felt a lot like just waiting around which is never very engaging content.
No, it's not. It's not. Um, we also have, as we mentioned, challenge mode layout for Chambers of Xeric. I know you did some raiding in the last league. I don't know if you've gone back to Chambers since.
I haven't gone back to Chambers in main game yet. But yeah, it's nice to have the challenge mode layout because like they say here, at least it's consistent and you can sort of practice it. The normal mode, it's weird. Like you get some chambers and not others. So I don't know. Like Chambers has always felt like a weird one to me. It's like a weird mix between raids and dungeoneering. And I'm sort of glad that they changed that in newer raids to not work in the same way because it's largely very confusing. So this brings it a bit closer to how the other raids work, and I think it will probably find quite a lot of popularity in this option.
Yeah, I wasn't immediately sure that this one was going to pass when they put it in, but it got more than enough support to do that. They specifically highlight that this will be good for speedrunners, challenge mode learners, and the Chambers of Xeric room explorers. And I think the second bit is the most important one here, is that they highlight the option for challenge mode learners to practice those challenge mode mechanics in a less stressful environment, because when you are put into that, you're kind of at the whims of doing a hybrid of either watching YouTube video, having people explain it to you in voice, and then it's kind of time to go in from there after that. So
yeah, that especially Chambers of Xeric, I think, is the one that I found the most overwhelming in the number of mechanics it has, because like some of the rooms are pretty complicated, right? Even like the non-boss rooms. Right. So it felt a little bit overwhelming doing that in challenge mode. I mean, it was leagues, so that.
Yeah, and I mean, if it felt overwhelming in leagues, how would that be on the main game, right?
Yeah. So. Exactly. So this is a really good way, I think, to take learners along in a way that doesn't. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a good change. It is a very small change in a sense, but.
Yeah. Chinchompa Insurance. This is I find this a funny one. As of this updates, any unprotected chins will go straight to your gravestone or death pile, just like normal items, so you have a chance to recover them when you die.
Oh yeah, I'm glad for this. I made a very stupid mistake at some point in leagues, and I lost a lot of chins.
Oh.
Yeah.
And you would have had to go. You would have had to go farm them back yourself.
Yes.
Which, I mean, wouldn't have been the end of the world, given the hunter relics and whatnot. But still a pain. Still a pain.
Exactly. Yeah, because especially I did use. It was like a stupid death as well. But yeah, I used the chins on like Echo Hesperia and a few other places, so I actually used them. So yeah, I was pretty bummed out when I lost it.
Okay. And we also have the Varaka Palace Garden agility shortcuts, just so you can. You don't need to go through Queen Ella Maria's kitchen anymore. If you want to get in there, you can just hop right over there. This unlocks with level 35 agility and the Garden of Tranquilizers quest, as we used to call it back in the day, or Garden of Tranquility.
It's a good one because there's apparently a Master Clue step.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Makes total sense. And finally, when it comes to Entrina and Imcamdo hammers, there has been a change made with this. The Imcamdo hammer is considered a weapon. It has no stats. So because of this, they are whitelisting both the main hand and offhand variants of the Imcamdo hammer, so you can now use them on Entrina if you so choose to.
Good.
And that's most of Pull 84 batch 2. There's not much else to mention from there.
I think there are a few outstanding changes from the poll itself, but I am overall super impressed with the turnaround time on this one.
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
poll passed, I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point, and yeah.
Yeah, I want the GE ones in.
Yep, that would be a good one to get in.
The
I think
editing
the
offers.
woodcutting, the change to that woodcutting actually is a benefit to getting gout tubers is also not in yet. So there's still a few changes I would love to get added, but overall, given that some of the poll changes tend to take like several months, I am really impressed by the fact that they're making quick work of this one.
Yeah, and a lot of them were, like little things around the edges too, so they can, do things like the Incando hammer quick enough, the agility shortcut. I'd imagine the Sire ones were baked a bit before, but speaking of baking, things that needs baking and needed a little bit more baking, we have the further discussion on Pull 84, this time around stackable clues. You weren't here for this. Yep. You did not get to share in the misery of this discussion and the back and forth.
Misery? Oh my goodness. Was it that bad?
Well, I mean, I had Alex on the show, and he said that the reason certain things in terms of the clues weren't going forward is because there were trolls in the community, and that's one way of looking at it. But I think the thing that was perhaps the most revealing from your guys' comments on this and what Jagex had to say is that this really came down to the question of what kind of updates need to get pulled and that clarification of those little gray areas that exist for things like clue metas and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
That was my big learning from that.
Yeah, the clue meta has a weird history, right? Because the 1 hour timer was sort of put into game unpolled to begin with. So I think a lot of people, like, I think the community is sort of split on it, right? Like, part of it is like, it should never have been put in the game to begin with. So it needs to be reverted. That's like one side of the argument. The other side of the argument is like, but actually a meta has formed around it, so it should stay.
Yeah. And all those things are discussed here. And I want to point out the way they do this poll, folks. So, or this news post. And you can tell me if you picked up on this too. But they start off the post by building with the goodwill item. And that is that the skip tokens are completely removed, not happening whatsoever. Because I think those were one of the most controversial things. And if you can bring people in and you can have the discussion that, hey, we listened to you, we took out one of the most controversial things, then that makes everybody else more amenable to the things that follow up in the rest of the post, which is a really good communication strategy. So whoever wrote this post knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know. I will not linger too long on skip tokens, but given that I never got to give my opinion on it, I ultimately think that they're actually a good thing. The reason being is that it is yet another reward space that you can add to clue scrolls. Right? It is something that can maybe drop a little bit more often than the current expensive clue items, which, other than looking pretty, don't have an actual use in the game. Like RS3 solved this really elegantly with fortunate components where you can disassemble clue items to get an invention resource. We don't have anything like that
and it's kept
in old school.
And it's kept easy clues in particular, and pretty much all the clues across the spectrum, to the point where if you get a special clue item, you're guaranteed at least 1.3, 1.4 mil from that clue.
Yeah, exactly. So that sort of gives that ecosystem something nice. I think skip tokens, they probably wouldn't have completely changed the meta, and it wouldn't have like made a big deal. But a lot of people are worried that with skip tokens, people can just start grinding out clues very quickly. I think they already can. I don't think the effect will be as big as people expect it to be, especially with plugins these days. It is already fairly quick to do most skills, and especially because you get skip tokens out of spending skip tokens. There's sort of a feedback loop that will keep, I think, skip tokens and treasure hunter rewards in general reasonably high priced. I'm not heartbroken that this is gone. I don't think the game was calling for this and needed this, right? Like, this feels like it solves a problem that never existed to begin with, but I also don't think it would have really been as disastrous as the community thought.
Yeah. And, I feel like this is kind of where Alex was coming from on that, in that, it's hard to imagine the people, a good portion of people who were against this saying they were against it for, a rational reason, as he did orchestrate, and other people I've seen have orchestrated that you go to that idea that they might be trolling. And I mean,
I don't think it's trolling, but I do think there is a definite argument. Like, I do think that there are probably people who are purposefully maintaining this argument because they are the ones that actually do the clues, right? Like, for them, they're really just arguing against skip tokens in their own self-interest, and that's fine. We've talked about this before. You are allowed to be selfish in these polls.
I honestly think that the best way to go into these polls, and not just the clue poll, but any poll, is in your own self-interest, not in terms of what's best for the game.
Maybe I do that sometimes, but I tend to also try and turn it around for myself and be like, okay, what is actually the worst that can happen?
Right.
I will not vote no on an option unless I believe it will actively change my game experience to the negative.
Yeah, but I don't think many. Maybe some.
No, I don't think
most people are doing that.
No, absolutely. Does that mean I should stop doing it? I don't know. Maybe not. I would feel bad if I did that.
Okay.
So.
All right. So you mentioned the 1 hour despawn timer and its origins, and that's what they added to this poll. It's a Q1. Should we revert the despawn timer for drop clues from 1 hour back to 3 minutes? And they say, to make sure we're aligned with what you want, we're putting this decision in your hands. Whether you're a clue juggler or a casual scroller, they want a system that works for everybody. They're happy to have the 1 hour timer remain in place, but they also want to acknowledge that it wasn't originally polled, and it did have a considerable impact for many players. So people will get to choose. Which way is this going to go?
I think it will stay. I think it will probably stay, but honestly, this is I think that I would not bet money. This is one I would not dare to bet money on. And I don't know yet what I will vote on this. I think the 1 hour despawn tower is harmful to the game. I think one of the leading pieces of knowledge in game development is that if you let the players, they will optimize the fun out of a game, right? No, I get
it. I agree.
They will optimize the fun out of a game. That is, and if you ask the players, they're like, yes, we want to, right? Like, let us optimize the heck out of this game. And then, like, 5 weeks later, they're like, oh, this game is so boring. And that's because they sort of made it boring on themselves. And it is up to the game developer and game designer to put the correct safeguards against that in the game without upsetting the players. And that's why we see some of these polls have such a hard balance, right? Because the players, I mean, I need to be careful because I'm talking about my audience here, but players are stupid, right?
There you go.
Players are dumb.
There you go.
And they don't always understand
there you go.
what's best for them, which sounds very what's the word I'm looking for? It sounds very sort of patronizing, and I don't mean it in that way.
Wrong.
But
you're not wrong, and I just want to provide a bit of context for folks here. You have written a game before, made a game with a couple of friends, published it on Steam, sold it, written other games, taken part in game jams. So this isn't you just speaking from an armchair side. You have written games before, and you know how it works.
I would like to believe I've done enough research and have enough first-hand experience that my takes about game design are not entirely ungrounded. That is how far I would go.
Right, and I'll back you up on that based on what I know, and people can choose whether to trust the 2 instead of the 1 on that.
Yeah.
But
So,
I
yeah.
I trust.
Ultimately, coming back to the 1 hour, I think it is, it is not an intended strategy, and I don't know if it's fun. At the same time, I don't think playing like Chunkman or Talman or Hardcore Iron Man or Ultimate Iron Man is fun either. So, at the same time, I can see the argument behind if players really want to do this, then they can do this. Like, it's not like this really breaks the game, right? It makes some people do more clues than they would otherwise do. But I don't think it is like even more than a percentage point of players that actually do this to a number where it is problematic for the economy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still think that making this a little bit more streamlined and actually giving normal players the option to stack up at least some clues without going to the extent of having to juggle them, which I do sometimes with even 2 or 3 clues, and it's just not fun. I hate doing it.
No, and that's where we get to the clue cap and the stackable clues in terms of the second poll question. The 5 clue cap is staying, but as you do more clues, you will increase your cap towards that 5.
Look, RS3 has a soft cap of 25.
Yeah, which is a ton.
It's also very definite a soft cap because I think I have like 100 of each clue in my back in that game. But if you had asked me up front, I would have said, yes, please don't give me a 5 clue cap. What's a 5 clue cap, right? I want to be able to sit down for a clue session. But over the course of the discussion around the clue cap, I have started to understand that the clue thing is really something meant you don't do for a long period of time. It's really something you do between Slayer tasks. And now that I am in the game doing a little bit more Slayer, it's actually kind of nice to break up your Slayer tasks with doing something else in the middle. So
yeah, I mean, you have
I am fine.
If you let it cap to that 25, or even put the rewards in a reward casket, you get obscene things with people opening dozens and hundreds of these at the same time.
I think you've always been able to stack caskets in old school.
Okay.
So that's not the problem. But I do see that if you have 25 in the bank, it becomes like a proper session you need to take time for.
Yeah.
Whereas 5 clues, you can, depends on the tier, but you can probably do them in less than an hour, always. And probably in case of like easy clues, even in less than 15 minutes.
Yeah. And, the interesting thing about this is that the progressive unlocks go based on the type of clue that you go for, with beginners needing 50 completions to get the first cap increase. Easy's 100, medium 100, hard 50, elite 50, master 25, and then it goes up a degree from there. But if you defeat the mimic, it adds a bonus +1 slot across all tiers. And am I the only one who finds this a little bit convoluted?
What do you mean with convoluted?
Like, I'm gonna stack clues, and I'm gonna get a few clues in my bank. Is it going to be clear how the stacking unlock is telegraphed in game based on the fact we have a table here on this? And I realize I'm nitpicking at this point here on that, but maybe it's just kind of like a little piece of candy that you open up every so often when you do a few more clues and you discover,
I think
got more cap
I mean,
space.
I don't think it is it's communicated very well that you can only get one right now until you get a second one and it says you didn't get it. So I don't think this makes the situation worse. Could it be communicated better? Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. It would be nice if you max out like your cap, it tells you you're not going to get any more until you solve it.
Yeah.
That's really all you need, I feel.
They said the goal is that the system respects your time, celebrates your progress, and gives clue content a real series of growth without making it feel grindy or gated.
They managed that.
Yeah, and I definitely agree on that last point, specifically without making it feel grindy or gated on there. I assume you'll be voting yes on the stackable.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
I'll be smashing that yes button as hard as I can.
Yeah. And we are recording this on Monday, so theoretically this poll should go live sometime this week.
Yep.
On that. And anything else on the clue stuff here before we move on? I know there's a couple of notes about the rogue outfit effects and double clue scrolls from pickpocketing, and they simply answer no on that. And,
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, I already think that this is a massive buff to like doing easy clues by pickpocketing ham members. Right. You can just quickly get 5 and go and do them. Which honestly, that might be a good way to just get your cap increase for easy ones.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense a lot, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah.
And you also get a warning about master clues, so that if you're at your 5 master limit and you open a casket that would give you a master, you will get a warning message.
Or might give you a master. You wouldn't know until they do, but yeah.
Okay.
Which makes sense. It's kind of sucky if you miss out on a master, because they are already hard enough to get. And people do want their bloodhound to have pets, so.
Yay! All right. Next up, Fletching from Varlamore. When we first heard the proposal on this, you were lukewarm on it. I was I was looking forward to it, and we got this now. Does this make you feel any better about the activity?
It's coming into the territory of okay, it's a thing. I think at some point, do they compare it to like Giant's Foundry? Or Herbivore, which...
Yeah, Herbivore.
Fine, if it is Herbivore, but for Fletching, okay. I don't know if I will necessarily engage with it a lot, but I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, so...
I think part of it is it's a theme thing, right? This theme just doesn't resonate with me as much.
Yeah, that's fair. So we have the Fletching knife. When equipped, it counts for all the passive knife effects, but for actions that require to use your knife on something, you'll still need it in your inventory. And they say, hey, just hit unequip. But the big thing that comes from it is that Fletching actions that use a knife will be reduced by 1 tick, which includes unstrung bows, shields, stocks, arrow shafts, outlaw dart shafts, javelin shafts, battle staves, and hunters' spears, as well as Fletching and totems. So it makes Fletching a bit faster.
Also, an equipable knife is going to be amazing for like doing hunter rumors. I always hated having to, sacrifice an inventory slot for knives. I'm a little bit worried, like, what's the left click option? I mean, you can change it with like menu entry swapper, I guess, but what's the left click option going to be? Like, it's always going to be either a pain to equip it or to use it for Fletching.
Right.
Left click is probably going to be used, but I don't know. It feels a little bit weird, but I also understand its a limitation. We don't want to get to a point where you can left click boast, or maybe we should just bite the bullet and make it possible to left click bows to start stringing them. and left-click logs to start fletching them. But
I mean, if you have it equipped, why not? But I mean,
that's a whole can of worms that I guess they don't want to.
You're right. It is a whole can of worms that is verging very closely onto tool belt territory.
Yes.
As an example, maple longbow unstrungs would go from about 104,940 an hour to 157,000 XP an hour with the fletching knife. Magics would go from 164 to 247, as an example.
Oh yeah, it's pretty significant.
Yeah.
And it's an untradeable thing, so it's definitely an account unlock that's going to be very important. In that sense, I feel it is more impactful than, say, the reagents pouch from Mastering Mixology. Like, I think the reagents pouch is something you could do without. Like, it increases your herblore training rate, not insignificantly, but mostly by not having to bank as much.
Right.
This is a buff that you're not going to get in any other way.
Yeah, and I think this is just the kind of little cherry on top quality of life things that they will add through pieces of content in the game.
I hope it's not quality of life, because quality of life should never be locked behind content.
Well, that's what it feels like. Just getting a little bit more XP on it. It's not fundamentally changing.
That's not
fletching.
Quality of life. That's just an XP rate buff, right? That's not the same thing to me.
Okay. All right.
Quality of life is the bowstring spool, which is basically the reagents pouch, but for
bowstrings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think you need to say anything else for it, in that, you fill the spool with bowstrings to use when stringing bows, and then crafting bowstrings will auto add them to the spool, and then that's really all there is to it. A maximum of 100,000 strings stored with 6 spools. So that's good. I always found the stringing side of fletching more annoying than the cutting side for some reason.
It is, and I think that's why a lot of people don't like stick to just the cutting the bows, and this, because it's 14 per inventory rather than 27. This makes it 27.
Yeah.
But without the fletching knife, it's going to be a tick slow. Well, is stringing already a tick faster than cutting? I don't remember.
I don't know. It's been a while since I've done it. But I remember getting 99 fletching back in the day when RuneScape was old school. Almost damn near gave myself RSI because of that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, was it before Make X?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
End branches, those are tradable, and the idea behind this is that you'll use them for the Atliotl darts, a cosmetic greenman mask, and 2 types of POH carvings. So the darts, I think, are interesting, using the end branches, and I guess it makes sense adding an extra source of these that can come into the game, right?
Yeah, it does. It's a little bit weird that you can only get them as drops right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that has always been my big thing with the the artisan skills like crafting and fletching and rune crafting and what have you, is that sometimes things come out as ammunition, but they're not added so that the players can make them, and they're just reliant on drops. And that's just personally for me, a way I play the game, that I prefer to have those sorts of things player creatable on there, just to kind of tie them off. And then we have the cosmetic masks, the Greenman mask, tradable. I mean, fine. I like the way the maple one looks. I might be a little bit biased in that.
Yeah, for me, the weird thing with these is I don't know why I would get them. I guess it's,
and we don't know we don't know how many of the ant branches are needed for this.
No, that too, but also I don't know, like fashion escape is not really a thing in old
No,
school, I feel.
because you cover up. What you're wearing is what you are. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm not convinced that this is like gonna be. I understand they wanted some kind of repeatable thing, but I'd rather they added like bowstring packs or some kind of like similar to like an ore pack or like a gem bag or something equivalent of like a bag of leaves that can help you like with forestry rewards or something along those lines, because this I can't see this becoming a reliable source of money making.
no, it's not. There's not going to be enough demand for it. But that's one side of it. But I do think they should add the POH carvings
Sure.
because it's just a nice little Varlamore aesthetic for your house, right? There's a wall carving and a statue. The wall carving will require 53 fletching. It will be used on a decoration spot, and the garden statue, of course, goes in a garden or formal garden at 79 fletching. So, um, that's the fletching activity rewards. I don't think there's anything too controversial in there. So I expect most everything there to pass, except for maybe the mask, as we talked about. But
I think like my current leaning is to just skip on those votes. I don't think they will harm the game, but I just don't care for them.
then vote no.
Why would I? Like, if there's people who feel strongly, they can have it.
And this is the question again. It's popping up here, and maybe people let us know in the comments. Do you vote no if you are just don't feel it's something that you want in the game for yourself, or do you take the more community centric path as Sirion is doing here? That'll be an interesting thing to hear, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But the Myreki are dead.
The Myreki
are dead.
Yes.
I laughed when they said the line in Sins of the Father. Because, for the in-joke on that is that when Modad was filling people in on the final Varlamore Grandmaster quest at this past Rune Fest, there was somebody who cheered when he said the Myrek are dead, and he took a whole meandering detour to explain why that is not a good thing. But suffice to say, we know now why the Myrek are dead.
How they died, yes, we know very well now. We played, yeah, it was, I think it was a good quest. We played Sins of the Father for those people who sort of didn't connect the dots.
Who didn't connect the
dots. But yeah, overall I enjoyed the quest. The combat, it was very similar to the RS3 version, of course.
Yeah,
well.
and that's one thing I appreciate for this is that I think they took 2 or 3 quests in RS3 in between Darkness of Hallowale and the conclusion to get there, and I appreciate that there's only the one here in old school in terms of Sins of the Father, between Darkness of Hallowale and the finale when that comes. And I mean, I guess we could, like, do we consider the raid opener quest as part of this series, or is that kind of tangential?
I think it's related, but it's orthogonal. We still have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to say.
No, and I think the way I want to sum it up is that the storyline and the pacing was good, and the thing that's I was looking for is that, how do you get from something that they did in, I think it was 06 or 07, it was probably 06 given that it's an old school, with Darkness of Hallowale, and then jump off to something a little bit more modern, setting up for a Grandmaster. And pulling on of course the same Darkmire plot points, albeit slightly different interpretation there. And as people know, I'm not a old school combat person, so the boss for me took a few extra rinses, and repeats there. But as the old adage goes, you play to the combat triangle and the weaknesses and the strengths of whoever you're fighting, and that makes it light years easier, making sure you have the best armor and whatnot that you can get. And the trick for me there was increasing my magic defensive values by about 23% compared to where I started it, and that let me have the food I needed for the enrage phase. But
yeah, I think for me, comparing this quest, I know a lot of people consider this like maybe not their favorite, but like among the favorite quests. I think for me, the biggest thing was there's a lot of I found that there's a lot of interesting ethical questioning, right? Like that to me really brought this quest to a new level where I think at some point you talk to like Safalan about your experience in Dark Mayor, where you have to leave. So that's the family, the Gadaranx family.
Yeah.
Who at some point during the quest series, you promise to take care of them, but then to not blow your cover and to get access to the Blisterwood tree, you actually have to what's the word I'm looking for? You have to bring them to worse circumstances where they will not be treated very well. That to me, and then you discuss that with Safalan, how is that an ethical thing to do? Which, I mean, no, but at the same time, are we preventing
justify the means?
Yes. And is that indeed, does it indeed justify the means? That discussion, I think, is interesting. The fact that a whimsical game like RuneScape can also ask those dark and deep questions is, to me, what brings some of these quest series to the next level.
Yeah, and, this would have been in the time period where they had the full modern lore team behind it, so, I mean, rightly so that they did that, and I'll be going through on the RS3 group Iron Man the quests that come after Darkness of Halavale in the not too distant future, and it'll be interesting kind of comparing the two to see which ones feel better. And I think looking back on it, I have a hunch which way that'll go. Despite what I had to say about the combat in there in general on that. So, but I don't know that there's much else left to say on the quest. It was a good quest. If I had to. I am looking
forward. I've never been a big Mauritania person. Those quest series never really spoke to me. I think they're a little bit too dark and unnecessarily so, perhaps. But even with that context, I enjoyed this quest, and I am interested to see how they are. How they will approach Blood Moon Rises.
Yep, which at this point should be probably about 8 months away, 7-8 months away, or 8 or 9 months away, based on timing. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of the prepared remarks for this episode of OSRS Update. As we mentioned, we're not here next week. You are traveling next weekend for Mother's Day, and it is that kind of a holiday weekend in general, so we're not going to be here for that, but we will be here the following week for Yama when that boss arrives. And you and I were talking about this pre-show. We're gonna bring some expertise on for that episode because it's probably still a little bit too high level for us, right?
Yeah, I don't think I will be able to make a meaningful dent into Yama.
All right, fair enough. Well, of course, if you want to hear that when it arrives, head on over to update.show/OS. You can also, of course, subscribe on all the podcast listening services out there, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Spotify, and more, as well as YouTube at youtube.com/@OSRS update. With that being said, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time for another episode of the Old School RuneScape Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Bye.